Hey, everybody, welcome to the R.H.E podcast. That's Respect, Humility, and Empathy. I am here with Isaiah Diesel, and we have a guest, Rose McNeally, who is a movie producer, as I understand, and we're going to talk about a whole range of topics with her.
Right.
Very interesting person. I'm martial law, by the way, and Isaiah, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us today as our viewers, and also Rose. I got to tell you, Rose, I have traveled to many countries around the world, and I've met a lot of people, and you seriously are like the most interesting person I've met by far. So really
Well, thank you. I'm
appreciate your
flattered.
really appreciate your time. Yeah, I have a pretty eclectic interest because don't really fall into a lot of categories, but talking to you, I was like, wow, I feel like normal. Like I have like a normal set of views. You're just like all over the place. So we really look forward to talking to you. But can you tell us where you're calling out of right now?
I'm calling out of Amarillo, Texas today.
Amarillo?
Amarillo, yes.
I thought that's in Amarillo.
No, Amarillo has an O on the end, no A.
I know, I'm joking.
Sorry, it's Spanish for yellow.
Right. So how's the weather there? I heard it's quite freezing there.
Yes, we had a once in a century storm recently. It's been fun. We never get snow where I live. It's a very dry area. So at most it'll blow through in this really dry dust that kind of coats the ground. We had at least 6 inches. It wasn't sticky enough to build a snowman, but we did throw it at each other. So it was nice to have some cold weather for once.
Well, we're from both Marshall and I are from Bakersfield, California. So there's like a 10-year cycle that every 10 years it snows.
Even longer than that. It's been 25 or 26 years now since the last time it snowed there.
The last time it snowed, okay, so if it hasn't snowed since 99, then I remember the last time was 99. So I guess that's 22 years.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So do you know a little bit about what we're doing, Rose, with this podcast?
Yes.
Could you maybe give us your take on what both Marshall and I are doing?
Well, I think it's actually rather interesting. I think it's a social experiment that y'all are trying to perform, and it's a good one. Social experiments are not a bad thing. I think that more people should do them. But I think it's a really good idea where you take different views and you get people to share and to have a good discourse. And in all honesty, that's subjective. When you discuss respectful, I mean, it's like if you outline a set of rules, then you can say, hey, that this is objectively going to be respectful. You can't do this, you can't do that. But otherwise, if you're talking like respectful is in to not offend anyone, then, that's very subjective. So, but if you can have a civil discourse between people where you can share ideas and you can agree to disagree, honestly, I think that really it can all be boiled down to one word is respect.
Absolutely.
If you can just respect another person's, and I like to say the other person's right to be stupid or the other person's right to be wrong, because they don't have to be right and you don't have to fix it.
Well, thank you for that. Listeners, beware. That's a great, can you repeat that again?
Okay, so people have the right to be stupid. They have the right to be wrong. But you don't have to fix it. And, and you don't have to like it. You don't have to agree.
There you go. That's great. Well, speaking of disagreeing, Marshall is what? I don't know. Marshall, can you give a 10-second overview of what you are?
Oh, well, I am a socialist atheist. Not a hard atheist, though. I am technically an agnostic atheist, 5/6 on the Dawkins scale of atheism. Basically, the reason for that is I can't actually prove scientifically that there's no such thing as a God, but I'm pretty sure there isn't. Technically, I'm agnostic, but I'm atheist in your religion. That's
so. I'm an absolute one because I've experienced Jesus Christ and he's changed my life. And so I don't really need to explain too much about that, but I really would like to hear from your perspective, Rose, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. Yes. I don't believe in a God. I don't believe that there is a God. I think that what most of us equivalate as God boiled down to two things: our conscious and our desire for there to be a God, and that part of our brain that wishes for that. And then what I would pretty much boil down to is physics as a whole, and how energy and matter move through everything, and how, that technically is what we as people define as God. But and of course, when you say God, it really also comes down to, what do you define as God? Now, as a Christian, I understand what you define as God, but Marshall, it's like, what do you define as God?
Well, there isn't. There's simply the universe. That's all there is.
Exactly.
It's energy and matter.
Exactly.
So Rose, I got a question.
No man in the sky playing dice with us.
So Rose, I got a question for you. If you were to find out tomorrow that there was a God, what gender do you think the God would most likely be?
Okay, so depending on the God that appeared, if I got to choose Freya, God, I love her. If there was a God that I got to pick, it would be Freya. I think that she's the most amazing God, as far as my favorites go. I'm one of those people. So like we talked about, I'm Druid. Okay, so Druid is a philosophy. And so one of the jobs of the Druids was to, litigate between people. So one of the things I spent time studying and whatnot is how to broker and communicate between people. And though I am not perfect at it, and I will admit I'm not priest level. I would call myself like an intermediate level. I'm still studying. I couldn't teach anyone, but it's like, but I'm still learning. Because it's 20 years of study,
Wow.
It's a lot of, it's a little bit of book work.
I heard that.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of book work.
So they had two jobs. One, mediate the problem, and if you can't mediate, just set the person on fire.
Well, not exactly. Right. That's a very fun Christian point of view of it. So, that like propaganda, you got to love Caesar. So the idea was that you were supposed to litigate the circumstances, and then if you could not convince the war or the disagreement not to happen, you had to come to an accord, and the accord could go as far as developing rules of engagement. And so either your leader and your leader come out and fight, or until one of you finally, the last man dies. It's whatever the accord that can be reached. And so yeah.
I'm sure we're going to talk today about the film industry and about how they trump things up, but I'm sure you probably saw The Wicker Man. Was that pretty trumped up and pretty?
We call that Hollywood magic, and even as a Druid, I accept this because I understand. I accept the industry, and let's be honest, it is an industry. It is about what? Making money. So it's about making money. And so that is the most sensational story you could tell with that. And when you come down to, well, what's going to sell? That's going to sell. And in truth, the Celts did put men in wicker men and burn them. It was voluntary, people volunteered for that spot.
Wow.
See, I think we should actually do that here now. Each year we pick one member of the House or Senate and do that with them so that we have a good harvest or whatever. I don't care.
I love this plan. I love this plan.
Oh my God.
We should all get to vote. And they're all on the ballot.
Oh my God. So this is very, very, very tongue in cheek. I do not wish harm on anyone, but I think Ted Cruz would be a good candidate considering the little stunt he just did, jumping away to Mexico.
Yeah, I will. I didn't vote for him in the first place, but I'm not gonna advocate for. Not that I advocated for him either. I personally am not a major supporter of him. I think he's too statist. He's not conservative enough. And what I mean by conservative enough is fiscally conservative enough. It's like, I think that he's too tax greedy, too war happy. There's just so many complaints I have there. And
he does like the warm.
Yeah. And what you're saying with Christianity, he isn't practicing separation of church and state. He's letting his Christianity cloud his judgment in politics. Because he's allowing it to pass judgment on others. Because gay is a sin, so he's not pro homosexuality.
Yeah. So Rose, can I ask you really quick before we get into the meat of our topic? Do
Okay.
you find as an atheist that it's hard to find someone who truly reflects your values in office? Because it seems both of them are in one way or another trying to pander to Christians.
Yeah, yes, I have actually learned to put blinders on when it comes to that, except when
Oh, really?
it pours over. So the closest I found was Ron Paul. So Ron Paul, devout Christian. I mean, you cannot argue the man's not a devout Christian, right? He has come the closest, and he still wasn't 100%. There was still flaws. He is the closest I've seen to someone keeping their Christianity and their, where it belongs.
So, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Actually, before we start, I'd like to just do a quick rapid fire round with you, like a 1-minute rapid fire. Marshall, if we could just rotate real quick, asking her some questions, because that'll help gauge us a little bit with you, so we're not completely shooting in the blind.
Sure.
Do you mind that?
No problem.
All right. First one. Tea or coffee?
Both.
Both. Okay.
All right.
Both.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Oh, again, I'm going to have to go with both, but for different reasons. I slightly favor the original Star Wars, but I love the new Star Trek.
We're actually, the last episode, we were talking about The Mandalorian and about how the Gina Carano got canceled. Okay, so let's see, next one. All right, are you pro-gun or anti-gun?
I am pro-Second Amendment.
Okay.
The Second Amendment should not be infringed. It is to do, and it's not just for home self-defense and hunting. It's also for us to take on our government.
Favorite sports team?
It's hard between the Rangers and the Astros. Sorry.
Angel. All right. So we got a couple more. Are you pro-choice or
pro-life?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I believe that everyone's right to self-defense, and the government to not infringe upon that. And women, when it comes to a baby, it can kill you. I've experienced the worst morning sickness known to man. I lost 30 pounds. It nearly killed me. So I understand that not every woman can do that. And I understand that not everyone can physically take that. And so I would never want anyone to have to face and ask for an act of Congress permission to go do that. That's between, people and their doctors,
Yeah. Okay, Marshall, one more.
It's a self-defense issue.
Yeah. All right. This kind of segues into the topic. Favorite actor or actress? Yeah.
Oh, dude. I could no sooner choose a favorite star in the sky. Can I have them all, please? If I leave their politics out of it, I love a lot of them.
We were talking about Mark Ruffalo and how he's like my favorite actor.
He is a fun guy. In all honesty, he's a sweet guy. I hate his politics.
I see. All right. Well, we're talking about the topic today is about film and how it influences people and society as a whole. And so maybe you can tell us, you don't have to go into too many details, but why you're interested in film and what it means to you as far as a medium and an art form.
It's it's like anything. At the end of the day, it is, like I said, it's a capitalistic industry. So you have to at some point, dare I say, sell out in order to make a reasonable profit at it. I do love mediums like YouTube because it has made film way more accessible. And if any medium to be made more accessible, this was one. I think that everyone should have the opportunity to play with movie magic. And the reason is, it's because it's very manipulative and it's very influential. You can look at movies, going back from the beginning of the invention of film, and it has mesmerized, captivated, and influenced people and made them think things were possible that weren't. It's like, okay, so let's pick a hard one here. Triumph of the Wills. Do y'all know that one? World War II, Hitler decided he needed a little propaganda film to get people on his side and to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Triumph of the Wills is still the largest crowd ever recorded on a film. Yeah, and so, and
Wow.
it's an amazing piece of propaganda, absolutely amazing. It was directed and filmed and produced by a woman, and it was absolutely amazing. And she was a lesbian, and when she was found out, they didn't like it. So yeah, and so film's
So
massively influential. I mean, just look how it was used there.
yeah, so or do you have a question, Marshall?
No, I was just going to say they even pulled troops off the front lines
Right,
to
right.
serve
Yes.
as extras in the movie.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a thing. It was a
Yeah.
thing.
And
And
that
when you
tells
watch
you.
it, yeah, and when you watch it, you're like, holy crap. I mean, it's a thing. It's like
Yeah.
the camera angles all like we've
Mhm.
learned to communicate with the camera from films like this. Her
Mhm.
upward angles making them all look like tall statuettes as you go through, reminding you of the great pillars of Rome and the kinds of, you know, influence and it's like in communication that she was giving with that.
Mhm.
Because it was all visual and powerful. I mean, images are very powerful. I mean, look how the BLM tore down all those statues.
Right.
Those are over 100 years old, and yet look at the power they still
Mhm.
had over them.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I want to ask you a question. This is going to be somewhat controversial, but do you believe in censorship, and is it ever appropriate, and can people go like too far with it? What do you think about that?
I am a free speech absolutist. And what I mean by that is you can't walk into a movie theater and say fire if there's no fire. That's lying. It's like that's one of the things. It's like censorship, or it's like freedom of speech. It's like there are consequences. You can't lie. It's like, but you can unknowingly lie, and you can create, but you can't go around and say, Marshall Neal is blah 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 and not get away with it. He could sue me for libel.
Right.
Like there's those restrictions, but otherwise,
Mhm.
no, I don't believe in a restriction of speech at all.
So
it's like I would rather hear hateful things than someone lie to me and keep it undercover.
So yeah. So do you think though that if there's any correlation between violence and on movies and violence in real life, and one of the reasons I want to say this is because I live in South Korea, and it's an incredibly peaceful country. If you just count North Korea being, if you just count the possibility of nuclear holocaust,
Yeah.
by and large, it's just you could walk down the street at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you don't have to really worry about anything. They do a lot of censorship here, and
Yeah.
if there's like drug use in movies and from America, they censor that out. If you watch WWF, which I still do, yeah, but
Yeah.
when they take chair shots,
Yeah, I know what it is.
they
I mean, I've
freeze
been
it
around
out.
for a while.
And so, and then also when you're watching TV, it's just kind of bizarre, but if they shoot someone and they're like bleeding from their stomach, they'll blur it all out. So they even do that with the smoking. Like, okay, what is this guy holding in his hand that smoke's coming out of it? But they'll blur it anyway.
Right.
So anyway, what do you think about that?
I think that it's really pointless. You can't bubble wrap the world. It's like, and there's no correlation between watching violence on television. There is between inciting. So, like you had mentioned, Michael Moore. It's like you can create a piece of propaganda that ignites anger, and it's like and incite violence that way. But in all honesty, can the artist really be held accountable for it, or should people be held accountable for not being offended? It's just one of those things. It's like if something offends you, is it the person's fault who offended you, or is it something in you that you need to work on that's hurt and damaged and that you need to address?
That's a really good point.
Yeah, kind of related to all of this is the fact that the stories we tell determine how we see the world. And as a person in the film industry, you have the opportunity to decide what stories get told and probably to shape those stories. I'm sure you're aware of that, so I don't need to ask if you're aware of that. Obviously, you are. But how does that knowledge, does that affect your decision making when you're deciding, hey, I want to make this film versus this film? do people in the film industry actually respect that knowledge and deliberately produce content to shape how we view the world? How are people using this power? Because it's an incredible power.
Right. Okay, so there's a little bit, so I'm going to unwind that a little bit. So
Sure.
I personally, I tell the stories I want to tell, and I tell stories I want to hear and want to see. So that's the kind of movies I write, and which ones of those get picked come down to the investors. So we only have so much control over what movies get made. I, as an independent, have more control than someone in the industry. Someone in the industry has more money than I do, though. So they get 25 million to make a movie. I get 5 to 10 million to make a movie. It's a little different. But I get to present to my investors a row of ideas, and they're usually more open-minded than industry professionals, because these guys aren't industry professionals. They're dentists, lawyers, real estate developers. They're, men that have got money, typically men. I very rarely run into women with this kind of inflow and cash, that, because I live in Texas probably. But, so that have this kind of money to play with, and that they're able to drop $10 million out of their, out of their income really quick. So it depends on what movie they like. So I'll go and present them 3 different films of the same amount of money and say, hey, I can go make these movies for this amount of money. Which one do y'all want to make? And they pick one.
Y'all. Oh, you got the y'all in there.
Oh, yes, I do.
I don't really hear the accent. I don't really hear your accent except occasionally. But my ex-girlfriend.
No, I've had diction. So I learned to speak. I'm from the Dallas area.
Okay.
And so I was, my parents were standard. I had to learn to speak.
One of my exes lived in Texas, and not all of them, just one. But actually, no, I love country music, and George Strait is actually probably my first or second favorite. I don't know, right up there with Alan Jackson.
But it's like everybody says, bless that man down here. Bless that man. He's a good man.
Oh, I love that dude.
So anyway, the industry doesn't have that kind of flow. I do believe a lot of directors are mindful of the kind of influence that they can have. I particularly think that Spike Lee is a particularly good example of someone who understands his influence. It's like, but it's like, and so I think that it's just a difference in who's funding your movie and what you're able to produce. And I think a lot of us actually do try to make movies that we want to see.
If you take a look at, say, for example, sexuality, okay? And if you take a look at the way it's evolved from the sexual revolution from like the 60s and 70s, and the way music has influenced that, I think music's played a big role. But if you take a look at the movies that are coming out more recently, there's more and more and more of a sexualization of teens getting younger and younger and younger. It's like, as a father of a daughter, I'm horrified by it. That and you know what? And quite frankly, it's disturbing. I find it disturbing. But do you think that that kind of like just whatever attitude that affects things like teen pregnancy and things like STDs, or do you think that there's just no correlation whatsoever? And if there is, is there an obligation for people to try not to, harm people?
Okay, well, that's a lot to unwrap. Okay. So, well, sexuality, using young girls sexually has pretty much always been a thing. This isn't new. This isn't become younger. Ever so often people point it out and get offended about it, but it never really goes away. This is dated back to the beginning of time of sexualizing young girls. It's not okay. It is something that needs to be stamped out. And I'm personally very upset about it when I see it. But the deal is that the reason that they do it is because it gets more response from people. It gets more views. There's no such thing as bad press, and it sells their product. So, I mean, if we quit buying their product, I guarantee they'll stop. But you have to use the invisible hand of economics there. Okay. And so let me see if I can keep going on with this. Okay. So in continuing with this, I also think that there's when you say sexuality, what plays part and parcel in with this is that we start telling women from a very young age that they're pretty, and we start putting them in pretty dresses and doing their hair a certain way and stuff, and teaching them and grooming them, physically grooming them into becoming sex objects, because we're, even if we are trying to keep it age appropriate, the deal is that we're still teaching them by that action that their physical appearance is very much a part of who they are. And I personally don't like that. Look, it's like, yeah, I'm your standard Texan, blonde haired, green eyed, it's like 5'8". And everyone would tell my parents, you're lucky she's pretty. Because I had a mouth. And the deal is that, no, damn it, it's not lucky I'm pretty. The privilege I receive from being pretty is overly sexualized from a very young age. He's like, I learned about that by 3. I could tell the vibes off of men, and a tumbler kicked in my head that this was not appropriate. And I stepped behind my daddy's leg, and my dad immediately understood and picked me up and took me away. Now, my dad's a cop, so he understood immediately what I was getting at. And he told my mom immediately, it's like, if she doesn't want to touch someone, if she doesn't want to shake their hand, don't make her. And I mean, it's just like, because by 3, I figured it out, and I was wearing this really cute frilly dress. And I rejected those clothes after that because I understood it immediately. And it's like, and when I talk to my female friends, the average woman is 3 years old when she figures this out. 3 when we figure it out. So I understand you live in this you live in a very hypersexualized culture. Women and men spend thousands of dollars to look more beautiful in that country.
Absolutely. Plastic surgery.
Right. And the makeup, and y'all are like leading the industry in beauty. And it's like, congratulations on the technology and the industry and the capitalism. At the same time, though, it's like, moral responsibility. What are we doing to the young Korean girls? What are we teaching them? What are we teaching people their value is? Aesthetics? Why aren't we teaching them that their value is their mind? It's like their mind is the greatest asset we all have. The greatest thing you contribute to someone is your mind, not your feelings. Your feelings are for you. You can't like take your love out and hand it to somebody, but you can take your ideas and your knowledge and your, it's like, and hand it to somebody.
Interesting. That's a really good take.
Well, I'm just interested because like this is this thing that you could actually use your power to combat in the market, by creating or favoring certain projects. Are you working on that? Are people doing that out there, or is it just?
There are people who are favoring certain projects. The projects that are getting favored right now, though, are what I refer to as this thing called woke cult that goes around. And there are a lot of movies. Wonder Woman. In particularly, they made Wonder Woman and I refer to this as a gimme to women because I want us to earn it. And I'm not saying that women haven't earned it. We have. It's just that, so I was an actress before I was a producer. And in particularly as an actress, one of the things I would run into is they'd say, okay, for leading lady, we need you to be virginal yet sexy. Like you want it, but you don't ever do it. Beautiful yet not threatening. It's like, let's see, soft and pouty and sexual. And I would hear things like, can you do more makeup, less makeup? Can you lose 5 pounds? Can you put on 10 pounds? Wow. And it was always very centered on, the physical attributes of my body more than my ability to lead a role. And it's like, I can cry on command. Why is this not the prize here? It's
so,
like.
Wow, that's really good.
But it comes down to what sells. Wow. Because would Wonder Woman sell as a average, like a size 10 running across? Would you want to see a size 10 running across there and fighting everybody? Because the average woman who actually fights and sword plays and does Western martial arts is a size 10. Because you have to wield that sword and you have that physical body stature and strength. And so it's like, what will people buy? And then, it's like, so yeah, that people try to interject their morality into their movies, and it does have an effect, and it does do some, I would say some good, but sometimes it really just damages the movie. I mean, look what's done to the Star Wars movie, that entire diversion into saving those horses type, replacements, and talking about how horse racing's wrong and how they need to rescue the animals. It's like that, that little PETA moment that we happen to have. Didn't that like take away from the movie? Why couldn't we have gone and gotten Lando and brought him back and had him be the code hacker?
Yeah, you know what? I heard a lot of Terminator fans rejected the last movie that came out because it seems like they were injecting one, feminism, and then two, aspects of the border in Mexico. So
Yes.
that movie lost a lot of money, but that was one of the reasons why I heard that it lost so much money. But it's Terminator is actually like my favorite series. But I have another question. One is, what is your overall impression of Christianity, and do you think that Christianity helps to curb some of the more immoral inclinations of society or humans?
I think Christianity is a great story. I don't agree with a lot of it. And I don't think it provides a great example or curve for morality, because honestly, if you need the threat of hell to keep you from doing bad things, are you really a good person?
Touche.
I mean, it's just because the whole idea behind Christianity is to want to do the good thing. But the reason I have a problem with Christianity is because it's heavily dependent upon altruism, and altruism is detrimental to individualism and is detrimental to humanity.
Altruism? Did I hear that right?
True altruism doesn't exist. It's like, think about it. When you do something for someone, like feed a homeless guy, it's because it makes you feel better. It makes you feel good, and that's okay. It's completely okay to feel good from that, because you should. You're helping somebody, and that should make you feel good because it's good, and it's okay that it's not altruistic. But, the idea of doing something completely for no gain does not exist. True altruism does not exist.
So, but that's true. Then that's true that inside of Christianity or outside of Christianity. So the other part of the question is, do you think it's good for helping curb some of the people's worst inclinations?
No, and I don't at all.
If anything, maybe it facilitates some of that.
I would agree.
How so?
If anything, it does facilitate it, because, like, let's just take religion as a whole. A lot of people do things in the name of religion, and they base it on the name of religion that justifies some really, really horrible, horrible things. And you can't really, like, it's like you don't hear atheists running around in the name of science. It's just one of those things. And morality also existed before religion, if you really think about it. And it's like, in all honesty, having morality is self-preserving, to have this basic code of ethics to have between us, that, hey, I won't kill you if you won't kill me. Okay, cool. We'll agree that we won't kill each other. And if anybody does kill somebody, we're going to ostracize them or something from the herd, because we don't want to live like that. Because we are more profitable by not killing each other. It's like, I can tend my crop and not have to. You can tend your crop and not have to worry about me attacking you. And so thus we are more profitable. And we might even, after we're profitable for a while, realize that, hey, you grow corn and I grow wheat. It's like, so instead of growing my own corn, maybe we can just trade, because I'm really good at growing wheat. Wow,
that's a good point.
It seems to me that a lot of the issues that we've talked about, particularly in the film industry and the content they choose to produce, could be solved if we made certain rules. And in fact, we've actually made rules. We've come out with rating systems. We do have some restrictions on the kind of content, what can be produced, all sorts of things. But as I understand, you are a free market libertarian, if you will. And the thing is the free market wants some of this horrible, horrible content
Right.
And if we just rely on the free market, we're never going to change that demand. That demand's going to persist, unless, of course, we use the power of narrative to convince people that this is bad and actually get people to stop wanting that. Because remember, the stories we
Right.
tell shape how we view reality. I just kind of want to throw that out there, that thought out there.
I
and
don't
see what
agree
you
that
think.
the stories we tell shape our own reality.
Mhm.
But yes, free market, but also don't forget NAP, the non-aggression principle.
Mhm.
So the only major rule that we all agree to is NAP.
Okay, and can you explain that for our viewers, please, our listeners?
Okay,
today?
Well,
so
explain it for me.
okay. So the non-aggression principle means pretty much at the end of the day is your rights end where another person's begin.
Mhm.
Okay, everything is volunteer. It's also called volunteerism. A lot of people refer to it as that. So, you know, good ideas do not need to be pushed at the end of a gun. You know, they'll be adopted by people naturally. And let's see, to cover that more. So non-aggression, you have the right to self-defense, but you don't have the right to hit someone you don't agree with. You know, it's like the idea is completely non-aggression. So you don't, you know, you don't hurt other people. You can say, you have a full line of free speech, and you know, you can say whatever you know you need to say, or whatever you want to say, but you can't touch them. You know, you don't cross that line. So, and then also it's all on consent. You can't, everything's voluntary. You can't force people to pay taxes. You can't force people to be a part of society. Everything's voluntary. So, and it has to be consensual, and consent can only be adults. And libertarians argue on what is considered an adult. We argue between the ages of 18 and 25 is adulthood.
Between 18 and 25. Oh, you mean that's when it starts?
Yes, because
Okay.
the frontal cortex isn't finished forming, and that's the part that tells you
Yeah.
consequences. So is it fair to trick an 18-year-old into war?
Right, exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think if we're being honest, I think for guys, I don't know. I've heard maybe girls have a couple year head start, but it doesn't seem
depends
like
on the person, but it's a two-thirds rule. 2/3 of women mature faster than 2/3 of men. 1/3 of men mature at the same rate as these women, and 1/3 of women mature at the same rate as men. This is an interesting 2/3 rule because this also applies to gender norms. So what we think of as masculine characteristics, like to play football, you know, rough play, 1/3 of women enjoy that same privilege as 2/3 of men. And 1/3 of men enjoy nurturing over rough play. Pretty interesting, huh?
Yeah,
Sorry,
very much
I like
so.
science.
No. Thank you. That's really good.
So Marshall, to answer your questions about it, it's like personally, I don't believe that anyone is forced to have an obligation. I believe that this is a creative field above anything, and that if someone feels called to speak a message, then more power to them. But at the end of the day, we all face the same problem is that if people don't like these films a lot of times. And it's just really weird on how you have to hit it, because there are some films that people really love that are really deep and spiritual. And then there's others that are not. I mean, like, look at the Wachowskis. They made The Matrix. Everybody loved The Matrix. It had some deep. They went super deep and made Cloud Atlas, and people rejected it. And that movie got a really deep message. You know, it's just, you know, everybody has that movie that they try to make, but, you know, will you recover afterwards? You know, society demands what it demands, you know, and that's at the end of the day, that's who decides whether or not our art's worthy.
I really want to get into the whole libertarian free market stuff. I got questions, but
Right?
I think we might just be veering off on a bunny trail if I do that.
So another time.
Yeah, we might have to do that. Yeah,
because I do believe Marshall and I have discussed this, and I do believe capitalism and social Darwinism makes far more sense inside of atheism. And because I think Marshall is kind of like cherry picking and trying to have it both ways. And I don't, but I mean, You
He's
wouldn't be
not
the
the
only.
only one.
I would say you
There,
wouldn't be the only person cherry picking, Marshall. But
That's okay, guys.
specifically on this issue, we had quite a disagreement on this one. But so I have another question. How do you think Christians and non-Christians can get along? And do you have Christian friends? And do you have more of a problem with Christians themselves or the theology? Because I have a lot. I have a lot of problems with. I have more problems with Christians typically than a lot of other people because they very many times seem to be some of the worst people I know.
yes, I have Christian friends.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my friends, I would say, are Christian because just population
Texas.
wise, there's just like it's Texas.
Right.
So I do have several pagan friends. I have the fewest amount of atheist friends, and that's because
Wow.
in atheism, it is very popular to be secular. And secularists and voluntarists have a hard time getting along because we have a very fundamental disagreement. So as a voluntarist, we believe forced collectivism is slavery, and that you're forcing people by threat of murder to comply. And, it's like your jail, loss of privileges and all these different things. It's really like, it's messed up from our point of view. And so, and the secularists think that we're being terribly selfish and that we don't care about others and that we're being small-minded about this and that it could never get to that point kind of argument. And so it's a very so it's hard to be friends with people like that. It's hard because that's a very big fundamental line. I mean, that's like slave and master trying to have a drink together.
Do you, with your Christian friends, do you just not ever mention or go down that rabbit hole of religion and maybe some beef that you might have with Christians?
No, we talk about it. I don't have a beef with Christians. Okay, so my beef, I was like, I have a beef with the ideology, but it's okay if that's what you want to believe. I mean, I don't have to agree with you to be your friend. It's like, how do you treat people? How do you treat animals? Are you fun to talk about? Do you have to beat your ideas over somebody's head? It's like, that's the kind of people I get along with. It's like, you can believe in whatever you want to believe in, man. I don't care. I don't suffer the consequences. It's not my bag, man. So I mean, it's just like, so you do you, boo, and I don't want to ruin your happiness, whatever makes you happy. So I'm never going to tell you don't talk about it. So, like, for instance, you say, Jesus spoke to me. And if you had another revelation, I would expect you to feel comfortable to say, hey, I had a revelation. And as your friend, I would be supportive and be like, hey, that's awesome. I'm really glad for you. Even though, it's like, I don't believe that, and I don't believe the same way you do. That doesn't mean I can't be supportive of your beliefs and respectful of you and supportive of you. I don't have to rationalize support, to be comforting.
Scott, man, you have a very unique perspective. I really appreciate you sharing that with us, man. Really.
It's called logic.
Yeah, but okay. So common sense, as they say, isn't so common. Like, let me throw this out there for a second because I haven't been speaking so much. I've been really wanting to hear you talk. The last atheist guy we had on that we met from the anti-theist group.
Yeah.
He was telling us, and I really felt bad for the guy because he's saying he goes out and he meets some Christians, and as soon as they find out that he's an atheist, their body language change and their tone changes with him, and they kind of like take a step back from him.
Yep.
And in fact, we talked for about an hour and a half yesterday. He and I, and I was saying, and I told him, I said, look, you got to understand something. Like, it's fine if you disagree on an issue, but the way that a lot of atheists talk about the issue is extremely disrespectful. It's like, if you talk about and I said, well, like, what would you think if I just came up to your son and called him an SOB, like right in front of you?
Right.
And he's like, yeah, I'd be really mad. I said, well, you're talking about the most important thing in my life here. And I understand if you disagree, you and I think I could talk to you for hours on end and we could be respectful, and but as Christians, and he's telling me the way he's treated by Christians, they're saying they want to kill him. He's going to go to hell, da, 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 da. And I'm like, man, I look at it as a Christian. I said, do you realize this person will never, ever, ever accept Jesus Christ when
Nope.
they see this kind of behavior, you know? And so I have
Yeah.
Muslim friends. My best friend, one of my best friends is a Muslim, and I treat him with love. I treat him with respect. But if we're Christians are saying you guys are a bunch of towelhead terrorists, you really think that they're going to listen to anything that you have to say when you're talking like
No.
that? You know?
And the Bible points that out, actually.
Right.
There's an explicit story in the Bible that it's actually like laid out explicitly not to behave such. But Christians have done that several times. I mean, one of the things that Christians never, ever, ever want to talk about is the fall of the Dark Ages. So there is a massive war in Rome perpetrated by the new Christians against the pagans. And they have a Christian spring, much like the Arab Spring that happened in Arabia. At the fall of Rome, there was a Christian spring, and they destroyed the grave of Alexander, and they burned the library of Alexandria, and they did all kinds of stuff. I mean, just burned temples, ransacked and murdered pagans, drug them through the streets, and was absolutely horrific. Now, I'm not saying that nobody else has ever done this, or like, oh, the mean ass Christians. No, it's just, you know, it's like that's something they never want to talk about. Everybody has their dark side, and God specifically told them in the Bible to not do it, yet they did it anyway. You know, but they did it anyway. You know, it's like free will. And so they went and did it. And every religion, well, just about every religion has some version of that. You know, especially monotheisms, they have a lot of that. Like there's like this massive violent Russian takeover of all the other religions, because this is the one true God. All other gods are wrong. So I think that gives pagans a little bit more of an open-mindedness when you say, hey, I have a different God. And they're like, really? No kidding. You look different. You know?
So Rose, so my position on all that is that we don't need violence and we don't need the government.
Right.
Because I can guarantee you I'm more secular politically than you are. I'd bet money on that.
Probably.
But because the reason why is because I do not want the government messing up my religion. So I don't want the government involved. I don't want the government.
Secularism here is interpreted as a form of socialism.
So yeah, I think we're using different terms, but
yeah, that's what I just realized. So libertarianism is a lack of government, and secularism here, the secular atheists here are very pro-socialism. So humanism that pours into socialism. So classical liberalism, and some of it has gone awry. So
if you're talking about no or very limited government, that's like a form of anarchy. But it's not like libertarians don't want a government. It's just that very limited, you know.
And so no government's anarchy. Libertarians want just enough of government to make it useful, but not worth buying.
Right. Oh my God, you summed that up perfectly.
They want the Articles of Confederation, maybe even less than that.
Yeah, I'm not a big what's his name, Alexander Hamilton supporter. The centralized bank. I'm all about ending the Fed, competing currencies, because it makes for a stronger economy.
Yeah.
Marsh.
And you need a separation. It's like, in honesty, this is where the founding fathers failed. They needed to not only say separation of church and state, they needed to say separation of finance and state. So it's like you need to separate finances and state, because you can't control the economy. The economy is the moral barometer of mankind. So whatever people, wherever they are at morally, is what they're going to shop for. And yes, we need to be more pro-education with that. And I would love it if people were more receptive. We keep trying to talk about the goals I have as a filmmaker. I have the reason I became an independent filmmaker is because I can make my movies. And I can choose slightly more of what I want. And as I make enough money and make more money, because I'd love to make lots of money, I can pay to make my own movies. And I can make more artistic films that have lots of meaning, because I would love to show people what libertarianism would look like. Because I think it scares a lot of people and they don't know how it works. And I would love to actually show people in a world what it would look like and how it would function with the problems that we have, and create problems in that world.
I really agree with that because I do believe you could solve, as you talked about the invisible hand. Marshall and I talked about how I believe the invisible hand could solve a lot of other social problems.
It's
But
faster.
one of the things in particular would be like the environmental crisis. We don't need to go if whether or not global warming is true or not. But I think one way you could solve that is by taking off all regulations on every company,
Yes.
but yet have them all regulated. I'm not regulated, but audited every year and given a rating, and that being clearly displayed on their packaging. So then you're going to have people
Right.
like me who are just not going to, not going to shop at someone who's being environmentally.
The libertarian solution for that, for the checks and balances, is instead of having elected officials, you have a lottery of people that are drawn like a jury. And so it is of the commonwealth that these people come and judge. And so you have a panel of, experts that are drawn from the lottery and a group of regular people who are drawn from the lottery. And that's who you have to present to. And that's who checks you over and whatnot. And so you have a balanced group of the people, and it's, volunteers. So if you don't want to go to it, you can say, no, pass me up, and the alternate goes ahead of you. People who care will go and they'll check it out,
Well, I do like the lottery idea to choose representatives because we do have an unholy alliance between finance and state.
We do.
Although I'm concerned that libertarianism wouldn't necessarily solve for that. But I could be wrong. And again, that's a topic for another time.
Yeah.
So I don't want to get into that. But I do have my concerns with libertarianism. I have a lot of concerns, actually.
Well, like any idea, if we took it too far, it's like any idea, if we took it too far, it would go bad.
Of course.
And so in libertarianism is like one of the concerns I have is it's a philosophy more than it is a party.
It's utopian.
Yeah, it's an idea. And so the deal is that we have problems within the party because of that.
Just common.
Yeah. You know what? One of the things that really gets me is that when people make the association of libertarian and liberal, like
we're similar.
People aren't. Well, there's a lot.
A similar root.
Yeah,
similar
there's a
origin.
There's a lot of differences because
we're socially liberal but fiscally conservative. So we believe that if you want to get married and own guns and grow weed, that's fine. But the government has no place in social. The government has a very strict and small role. The social belongs to whoever is called to it, and it's volunteerism. So if you feel called to take on something, go do it, man, freely with our blessing, whatever. You don't even need our blessing. Go do it. If you want to help the homeless, go help the homeless. More power to you. Maybe I like that idea and I'll contribute to it. I love that technology is actually catching up to libertarianism because we have so much technology now that if we were given, it's like free reign of it, you can put on there a GoFundMe to help the homeless. And if there weren't so many laws prohibiting it, you could do so much. Like the city I live, it's illegal to feed the homeless.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Like in public.
Yes. Well, you can't set up a barbecue grill and just make hamburgers and feed them.
Wow.
Yep, and it's a Christian town.
Rose, we're going to have you back on to discuss this because I am so utterly fascinated by you and your opinion. I'm just really blown away. You've made so many great observations and you've challenged my way of thinking, which is good, which is the kind of thing that we want to do with this thing, exchange ideas. When you start to get into the area where you think that, and Neil, Marshall says this great, or how do you say it about humility, Marshall?
I don't remember other than what I do say is that you can't learn anything unless you're humble,
Right.
You have to acknowledge first, I don't know everything, and then you're open to learning something new. So humility is key to knowledge. Starts with it.
I saw this great meme that says every house needs a teenager because they know everything.
Right.
So and actually, I think you got quite a few teenagers living with you right now, right? Rose?
Oh yes, I have
Yeah.
a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old, and my 14-year-old has decided that he is wiser than my husband and I. And
Oh God.
I just really have a lot of fun with this because I've reminded him, it's like, you're the second child, you know, it's like, really,
Yeah.
you're the second child. And it's like, and I'm Generation X. There is nothing that you can think of to do that I haven't already ruined.
Right. Well, you know what? I got 10 years till my daughter becomes a teenager. She just turned 3. But I have plenty of time to prepare for that. But with that, we are gonna have to call this podcast. And thank you so much for coming. We really want to have you back because I think it'd be great to just specifically talk about the libertarian and socialism because there's so much more to talk about there. But we really just want to thank you for your time and contributing to your voice and treating us with respect. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, no problem, guys. I loved being on and it was fun.
I really appreciate your time. All right. Well, we look forward to having you back on the next session of Respect, Humility, Empathy. And thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.